that's fine. So, in any case, we're going to get started. I'll give a quick introduction. Moderating today will be Renato Beninatto. I'm going to take a little bit of a back seat, although I might not be able to resist saying some things. Renato, if you don't know Renato, you should connect with him on LinkedIn because everyone should know Renato. He is the maven of the industry, the connector that everybody kind of needs to know. If you've read Crossing the Chasm, describes people like Renato, and there's always one in every industry, and he's the guy. Okay, I hope you live up to that, Renato. All right. Renato and I met, I think, in 1999 in Dublin. Um, we had a lot of fun. We were there on business. Business involved late night drinking and Dublin shenanigans. So that was really good time. We've been friends ever since. So that's a lovely thing. Bit of history. He is the chairman at NIMSY. NIMSY provides expert advice and consulting and training for the localization industry. You could probably add to that, Renato. Paula, I know for many years. She's worked at a couple of companies that we've worked with. Paula is a program manager for localization. She's really seen a lot over the years. And then we have Hui Zhu, who is one of our very first customers. You may not be aware of that. One of our very first customers for Localizer, our product that automates software localization. And Hui works at a major financial institution. We don't have permission to say who, but you all know the company. So um, I think you're going to see one of the things I'm going to preempt here is that Hui works in a way that might be our future for many of you. She's really quite dynamic. She has her influence in many areas within software development at her within her group of her company. And she does a lot more than localization, but she also leverages herself very, very well. So that may be some of the themes. So I'm gonna, this is really going to be a conversation more than a presentation. So I'm going to take off this slide so we can kind of get to it. I'm going to give a little preamble here, and it's not happy. And the not happy thing is something that we just cannot ignore in our industry, in that with everything going on with LLMs, and we all say AI, but I'm going to say LLM because we all know that machine translation is a form of AI, and that's been around a long time. So we'll say LLMs. Uh, the amount of layoffs have really, really hurt the industry. I can tell you that in some of our customer base, entire departments have lost, and suddenly my team is talking to somebody in IT rather than a localization expert. I mean, that's really a challenge on our side, on the vendor side. On the personnel side, everybody's looking over their shoulder if they're not unemployed now. Within technology, there've been, this is an old total. So this is at the beginning of the month. I checked 73,000 publicized layoffs within the tech industry. Big offenders, Oracle, they laid off 30,000 people. Amazon, Nokia, Block, Meta. Uh, that is the stuff we hear about in the newspaper or the broadcasts. There's many more. So I think this is one of those times in our industry that reminds me a lot of 2008, 2009, where we have to think about how do we remake ourselves. And some of that is what we're covering today. How do we do more? There's a tweet that May Habib made. She's the CEO of a company called Reader, or Writer rather. I just really liked it. I met May once. She was super smart, but I don't really know her. Um, uh, she wrote, I actually think when she's writing about AI mass layoffs. She wrote, I actually think that is lazy, not brave. You need leaders who can look people in the eye and say, look, this will most likely be a smaller company, but not by a lot. But I need a company here with all of you that has 10x of the footprint we got today. And we're going to do it with AI. There's a little bit more to it, but that's the gist of it. I really see personally using it quite a bit and within our company using it and doing product development with it, that it's not the panacea it's being sold as, but it is incredibly productive if you put it to use. So with that preamble, I'm going to turn this over to Renato. The first area we were going to talk about was really how do we raise localization to the C level so they don't just think, hey, just, we don't need translation anymore. We just put it through AI because that is real.
Thank you, Adam. I think that the data that you shared, I will add another piece of data that came out today
Mhm.
is um, that tech companies are spending more on AI
Yes,
tokens and subscription
I saw
than on people, right?
that.
So we're getting to the point where it's going to be cheaper to use humans to do stuff than to continue using AI, which in a way, it's almost like a self-fulfilling prophecy. The other data point that comes into the conversation is the fact that Anthropic is throttling access to tokens, and it's increasing the price, going against the conversation that we've been having that the cost of processing AI has gone down 100 times, but now we're already hitting a level where this is probably where the prices are going to stay, and we're getting to a certain level of stability. Another data point that I'd like to add is that I looked at the latest Gartner hype curve, where LLMs are already past the peak of inflated expectations. And some features, like generative AI in general, is already reaching the trough of disillusionment. So, as fast as AI has been in adoption, like nothing has ever happened in human history before, it also starting to people are starting to see the reality more in that context. But I want to start our conversation with one of the points that you made. How do we bring this conversation to the C-suite? And I'm going to anchor it with one of the things that you mentioned, that now whole departments like at Block are laid off, and a function that was sometimes under marketing, sometimes under product, is going immediately under the people responsible for AI, that are CIOs, CTOs, IT, VPs of IT, and so on. So this is not an if or when. It's a conversation that is now. It's happening. How do we talk to C-level people about value instead of what we do? And this has been the major theme of my conversations recently. And maybe I'll start with you, Paula. You've worked in large organizations and you've worked in smaller teams. What's the difference there? Where is the opportunity? How do you what do we need to talk about?
What I find interesting about this is that this question and these conversations, in my opinion and my experience, haven't changed since starting in the industry, over 20 years ago. I think AI is just accelerating it. The key to success has always been for localizers is to integrate our mindset and integrate our operations and integrate our knowledge into all the facets of the business. And in order to do that, we need to be curious and learn about how all of these different teams are operating, right? Even before AI, what do these teams care about? And then inject the international component into that. Marketing cares about conversion. Okay, where are we seeing conversion with regards to country or language, and start injecting those kinds of metrics into metrics that already exist.
You are a team of one, basically, when it comes to localization, but you're in a regulated environment, in a complex environment.
Mm-hmm.
Is this the recipe? If you don't have anybody, who are you going to lay off?
Yeah, exactly. So, like you mentioned, I operate a one-person localization program, and we onboarded our vendor to help us run daily localization operation. And so, including every day taking care of the requests from all the teams within our organization, and as well as the tool support from Lingoport. So, for your question, how to bring this to the sea level in this pressure, I think I would like to echo what Paula just mentioned. It never changes. You have to consider how the business runs. So, for us, like you mentioned, we are a highly regulated the industry. And for our executive, one thing is very important is we have to follow the policy and the law. So we cannot just throw the AI translation to the end user. That is actually against the law in a lot of countries. Also, even within United States, there is a policy that human has to be in the loop for anything that before you put it to the market to the end user. So if you bring this to their attention that this is not the job that can be totally replaced by AI.
And I wonder if there is any job that can be 100% done by AI, right? If we look at the news, the classic one is Klarna, the company that fired all their support agents just to hire them back a year later because AI wasn't fulfilling the promise. But I don't want to bash AI. I think that a common trap that we as an industry fall into is this trap of thinking that, oh, this is not real, this is not, there are problems with the technology. The advance that the technology has made in the last 2 years, let's put it this way. Even every week, we're hearing a new model coming out that is strong on one side and does amazing things. The strategy of bashing the technology doesn't seem to be helping us very much. So the question, and Paula, you brought up the point of speaking the language of your stakeholder, right?
Mm-hmm.
Understanding what is driving them, what puts them in that position, and so on. Let me try to rephrase this and see how you can position. So, Hui, you talk about compliance. That's one topic that is very, very relevant for major organizations. I have a friend who is the CIO of a health insurance company, and he says if a patient dies because of a medical error, we know that it's going to cost $3 to $10 million. That's how much they would pay in insurance premiums. But if a patient died because of an AI error, he says, my company goes bankrupt because no jury is going to accept that kind of stuff. So there is an element of risk that the C-suite understands, that we never talked about this. As an industry, we have been talking about how we do things, right? Is that your experience, Paula? Because it's very easy to talk about cents per word, reuse, consistency, glossary, terminology, style guides, and so on. But that's our language. What is the language of the people that we talk about? Or that we talk to, not we talk about?
I mean, business owners is revenue, right? Turning a profit. And we as localizers are the one person, the one role in a company that is obsessed with customer experience, non-domestic customer experience, non-English speaking or non-domestic customer experience. So if we can pose questions to leadership, like what are some of the friction points they're seeing? What is stopping us from earning more revenue in non-domestic countries, and start understanding what they consider the biggest risks. Is it shipping, physical products into other countries? Is it compliance? Is it lack of customer engagement? Is it customer drop off at certain points of the customer journey? Understanding what is keeping them up at night and how we can add our knowledge and expertise to help solve that problem from an international, global perspective.
Hui, anything from your side? What is the question that you or the misunderstanding that you most often have to clarify when talking to your stakeholders inside the organization? What is it what is the thing that they get wrong consistently?
If you mean AI, I think one thing that a lot of leadership continue to get misunderstanding is that it's very easy to ship AI solution to the production. And that misunderstanding actually causes a lot of, I think, a layoff. They think that they can simply reduce the workforce and replace with AI. So as the localization professional, one thing we have to get some alert is how we can bring this. We embrace AI, but how we can bring the AI solution actually to production. We're still working on that. Although we started very early to bring AI in the localization process, but we bump into a lot of issues. Let them see the issues, then help them to understand the complexity of the localization itself. Like a lot of things we don't normally talk to them, glossary, consistency, and a lot of tools we have to use to protect, this quality, the file format. Localization is a very complex process. We need to help them understand and help them to see the complexity of the process and how to leverage AI to build a different process.
Well, complexity, I think that's a word that we should all keep it in our back pocket for whenever we have a conversation. Because in my experience, when I talk to executives in general, they think that translation is one monolith, right? It's translation, and that's it. It's done. They don't understand that translating from English to Japanese is one thing, from Japanese into English, it's another thing. They don't understand that you have multiple formats, you have multiple ways of translating for audio, for video, for text, for apps, etc., etc. And complexity is very, very, very hard to automate. And I think that what you described is usually one of the tools that we can use in our defense. Another data point that I got in several conversations that I've been having recently, including one this morning, where I heard that a client of ours had their budget reduced from $24 million a year in localization to $5 million, right? Another conversation that I had earlier this month, it was a similar proportion, $30 to $6 million in localization spend. So this doesn't mean that localization went away. It's just that the cost of doing it is significantly diminished. So when we talk to the industry, the perception from the providers mostly is that they're losing value, but it's not so much value; it's just price, right? Paula, how have you faced this challenge working with your suppliers around this reality that AI translation is virtually free? And by the way, today I read it on LinkedIn, the new Bible, that Google Translate celebrated 20 years this week, right? In 20 years, we've been dealing with Google translating every day, much more than all the people can translate in 1 year. It's the magnitude is incredible, and AI just, which is another form of machine translation, or machine translation is a form of AI. It's just a way to accelerate and reduce the cost of everything. How have you handled those things, both of you internally, with this big drop in price?
You mean speaking to the executive of using
The
AI?
executives already cut your budget, right? So the budgets went from 24 to 5, 30 to 6. Uh, there's no loss for the company. It's an amazing benefit. And if you have a localization team, your team is excelling by showing results. But how does that affect your supply chain? How does that how does the supply chain, and Adam, you might want to jump in and make a comment on this. I see that you're there nodding and agreeing with it. You're muted. You're muted. It wouldn't be a
Yeah,
webinar
that
if
way
you
nobody. I'm working from home and nobody hears my dogs barking if I get a delivery. Um, anyway, so Hui brought up. She had one sentence that really, I think we have to think about. If you're using AI, how does that change how you do business? How does that change your workflow? If you're simply saying, oh, well, I'll push words to AI and use it in the same way as I use machine translation, um, you're not really going to lower costs. You still need a human in the loop, and we do still need a human in the loop for sure. There are quality analysis tools that are coming up right now along those lines, but fundamentally, I'm just reminded we're at a time. There was some fiction that kind of impacted me when I was in high school. It was an Ayn Rand book. I don't even remember which one it was, and I'm not suggesting people read Ayn Rand. It's really juvenile in some ways, but there was this Rearden metal that was part of the story that was stronger than steel and everything, and nobody initially knew how to build with it because it was a different material, but you needed less of it. So it was more expensive, but you needed less of it. And I kind of feel like the analogy is pretty good. So you wouldn't build a bridge the same way with this metal, right? So you wouldn't localize the same way with AI. You wouldn't charge per word. There's different processes. You need to have something around the words along the lines of context. You need it to make it easy to collect and associate that context. And I've given a bunch of webinars on this, like my last month even showed some of that with visual context and string association and all that. But still, it takes a certain amount of freedom for the localized professional who now has had staff reduced to suddenly experiment with another workflow when they're probably kind of underwater trying to keep up with demands when they have 1/10 the staff. So I'm sympathetic to that situation, um, but this is really a case to bring in consultants if you can't do it yourself. So that's my little soapbox. I've said too much. I should let our guests talk.
Yeah, I have some comments for the previous
Yeah.
question that Renato asked about the value and the cost. So it is true that if we look at the per word cost, it definitely will decrease or is decreasing. However, the total, I don't agree with the value of localization is decreasing, especially in the enterprise. We still need to do global expansion, expand our business to other countries. So this is our value of localization. And we are under the pressure, of course, when they say AI can do translation and the per word cost is decreasing. We're of course under the pressure that to reduce the cost. To bring the value of the localization and remain the value is to let them know with the same budget we can do more. So it's the case in our company. So I told them in the past we couldn't do a lot of localization, including those word heavy developer guides, which we put on hold because it cost is too high. Now we can consider with the same budget, we can consider to localize those developer guides, which our clients has been asking. We couldn't do, but now with the same budget, we can consider we can do. So this is to keep the value of localization to in at the same time use it as an opportunity to increase the scope of the localization.
Yeah,
Would you
exactly.
describe the? Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Paula.
No, I was just going to say that that's exactly what Adam was saying. You opened with Adam at the beginning with that quote from LinkedIn that woman described about using AI to enhance and increase and improve velocity and be able to provide. I mean, the same thing happened when MT was introduced, right? All of a sudden, now we can translate knowledge base articles and we can translate content that will work well with MT. So, yeah, I agree with your point.
And the point that I wanted to make is how do what we need. And now this is an industry question, and I think that this is more or less the challenge that we're facing today, is that not everybody that works in localization is prepared to have business conversations, right? So one of the senses that I get is that we're shifting our conversations from output to outcomes, from what we do to why we do, from how we do to connecting it to bigger business purposes. And not everybody is prepared to have that conversation, is trained to have that conversation, especially people who come from the language background. One of the reasons why this was a joke that I used to hear in the beginning of my career is that translators go to learn languages and go into translation because they can't do math, right? So the good thing is that business is not about math; it's about arithmetic, and we learned that in elementary school. So are you feeling that the quality and the type of conversations that you have with your internal organization has changed? Is that, are you still talking about the cost of localization, or have you moved into talking about the value of localization? And how are you able to do that?
I mean, like I said at the very beginning, this is a topic that we've always been talking about in our industry, right? How do we show the volume? How do we show like the outcome of what we do? And again, it comes down to like, what is the company trying to achieve? What do they care about? Um, Yeah, being curious and speaking the language. I mean, language professionals, you said, the joke about them can't do math, but I mean, like, what do language professionals, what do they really know? They know how to connect with people. They know how to read people. They know how to communicate. They know how to, and this is a skill that, only humans can do. One of my favorite quotes that shows the value of localization, in my opinion, is that one from Nelson Mandela that says, if you talk to a man in a language he understands, that goes to his head. If you talk to him in his language, that goes to his heart. And that really comes down to customer experience and customer centricity. If you're talking to leadership, they are building products and services for customers. And how do you reach those customers? And language professionals are the ones that
Paula,
understand. Sure, yeah.
let me challenge you on that, right? Because this is something that I hear a lot, and we hear ourselves talking about this a lot. But is
Mm-hmm.
it true? Do the professionals in our industry, the people that have been doing words and language pairs and translation memory and stuff like that, do they really know about culture? They might know about their culture.
Mm-hmm.
One of the stories that I seldom tell is frequently tell is at Moravia we translated Microsoft Office.
Mm-hmm.
And for years, we were doing 132 languages. And then all of a sudden, we start having problems with Dutch. Why Dutch? We never had problems with Dutch. And then all of a sudden, we're getting the level of complaints around Dutch was increasing. And we looked at our supply chain, we looked at if we had changed vendors, if there were any problems with the memories, and we did a root cause analysis of all the possibilities for why the quality of Dutch was going down. And it took
Mm-hmm.
us a while, but we found out that the manager of the program changed, and the new manager of the program was Dutch. And he was reading the Dutch localization and he was spotting opportunities for improvement. So the quality was very relative, right? When you're doing 132 languages, who really knows what quality is? So my fear, and I don't know how you deal with this, is that we are telling ourselves this story that we create value because we understand culture, we create value because we understand communication, but we didn't before. How did we start knowing this all of a sudden, that we create so much value that we weren't creating before? And this is a little bit a real question because I don't know the answer. I don't know that I
Yeah.
know how the Hmong community sees humor, for example, right? And
Mm-hmm.
this is where we could create value. Hui, do you have a comment on that?
Yeah, so I think one thing is I want to say is the pressure help us. We always know our value, but we may not speak out to other or leadership. But when we have the pressure from AI, from leadership, that they want to decrease the budget, they want to cut the staff, that is the moment we, all this value we know deep down in our heart, we started to speak out. So with that, I would say, and also not, maybe I will shift a little bit. So I want to help our fellow localization professional also see this as a opportunity. So yeah, when we get comfortable under, the past few, maybe 20 years, we do things the same way we're doing. Now it's like, AI is disruptive with localization. So start to think, so like the value we never speak out, this is a time we need to bring to our leadership. That's one thing. Another thing is start to look and in this changing world, how your process, how your own value should be repositioned in this new environment.
And to answer your question, Renato, we all know quality is subjective, language quality is subjective. And this is why it's so critical to look at the metrics, look at the data, talk to customers. You know, your Dutch example, there's a new, I forget, you said he's a project manager that speaks Dutch now, but who's talking to the Dutch customers? You know, what is their user behavior? Like what are they saying online? One thing that I have found recently is that AI is enabling localization professionals to access this data more. You know, previously we would be reliant on, you know, analytics teams or, you know, other teams that are deeper in there. But now with AI, we can use that to harness more data within the company and learn more about the customer behavior. How are the users using our Spanish version different from those using the English or the Portuguese or the Italian? Like AI is allowing us to be able to track this user behavior, you know, for good or evil that people talk about. You know, we have that capability. And so we need to be talking to the customers and understand how they're feeling using our product in their language.
And this brings me, I agree with you 100%. And this brings me to the change in behavior and skills. We talk a lot about soft skills and new abilities that localization people need to have to survive in the market. This is the kind of thing that I haven't encountered many people in organizations. I see leaders and one person here, another person there that thinks outside the box and thinks about what you just said is a classic example. And I think we have a question from the audience that is related to that. What kind of quantitative arguments can you bring to the C-level that ties AI usage to risk that are more powerful than the existing hype that positions AI as a panacea for translation, right? And I think that one of the themes that Hui, you brought up right in the beginning is the complexity of the stuff, right? As soon as you start compounding the elements and the variables that we deal with on a daily basis with localization, and you start talking about agentic, what's the right word? It's not deprecation. It's that the performance of agents go down when you do an agent over another agent. There's a term for that, but I forgot what it is. That you start with 95% quality within 10 or 12 iterations, you're down at 40% quality. That is unacceptable, right? A compounding effect. That's the word that I was looking for. So we need to speak this language. We need to learn how to do that. How do we do that? Or how do you do that?
So I can give you some example and may related to the question in the Q&A. So the complexity, right? We of course we embrace AI. We shouldn't show that AI. We shouldn't just simply push away AI. So our example is when we started to include AI in the process. Actually, we are seeing the cost increase, not just because of the engineer, we needed to engineers to build those pipeline, etc. And also because the industry hasn't fully adapted to using AI. So even though we can get the AI translation easily and build the pipeline in our system, and when we engage with the human review, how the vendor charge this, how do they still using translation memory? So it comes up with the cost actually is increasing. So we need to show this to our leadership. We are building AI, but now because the industry is ready, so we need to implement or process this in a controlled way. So let them say the cost along the way is not a strict drop, But along the way, it may increase at some moment, but eventually we will get to the point that we can fully leverage AI and have this streamlined process with the average cost per word. If we may not even count by word anymore, so the per unit cost will drop, but the value of localization is still there.
Adam, you are constantly one of the values of Lingoport is that you're working with internationalization, which is the first step in the localization process. So you're at the source. You're talking to the development people. What are and you work with large enterprise. What are the most common myths or misconceptions that you come across that the localization people complain that their bosses don't understand, and how do you counter that?
Well, there's two aspects of that. The first being how the code is written, and the second being how it's actually localized. So the industry tends to throw them both under internationalization, but just because it deals with source code. But in terms of how the code is written, I have countered discussions that says, well, isn't internationalization dead? Can't I just point, Claude at my repos and tell it to internationalize, and it does it? Much the same as, that happens with translation, right? And so the truth is a lot different than that. We're going to have a blog post on this in May, just because we ran a lot of experiments. Well, we shouldn't just say this can't happen. I mean, you have Sergey Brin saying that 70% of his code is being written by AI now, which I sort of doubt. But what happens is that there are limitations to AI that even if you query AI, it will tell you its limitations. And there are some serious ones with internationalization. So one of the things we did is we have this silly little app we use for demos. It's called Rebel. It's at rebel.lingoport.com. It's a fake storefront for buying Star Wars spaceships. Okay, so and obviously we don't use branding, so Disney doesn't sue us. But in any case, it's a very cute demo thing that engineers can hopefully relate to. And we just pointed out, said, internationalize this. And when you look at the code, initially you're like, wow, this is pretty cool. Not only can I internationalize it, but I can externalize a string and ask Claude to translate it. But then when you look closely, first of all, you go to, run the application and it doesn't run. So things happen, but it just misses lots of parts of it. The other thing that AI doesn't do well is that real software at scale, it's not some little demo thing. It has many parts, and it's very difficult. What you're going to end up is frameworks that are entirely different in different parts. Let's say you have the React framework here, and you're going to externalize and manage locale in this way here, and different that in this other part, and the two don't mesh. And so you're actually without an educated method of prompting and reviewing the results in bite-size activities, you're actually going to set yourself back. Bugs are not free to fix. AI isn't necessarily going to fix those bugs. So really what happens is that when you create product like Lingoport does, a lot of what you're thinking about is how do I manage this resource so that you're not just letting organizations ad hoc fix things in a non-uniform way that's going to be impossible to maintain down the line. So a lot of your thinking around whether it's the internationalization or the automation of the localization is how do I get a consistent approach across my organization? If you've got a team of 5 Java, JavaScript developers using React or Node or whatever they are. That is a really fast team and you can get a lot done. But at some point, your organizations have, a team of 100 in this continent and a team of 100 in that continent. And now, if you have an ad hoc approach to solutions, you're really going to have a problem. And maintaining it becomes the overwhelming cost of software development, and updating it becomes the overwhelming cost. And handling some security alert is the overwhelming cost. And so to that, I'd say you still the principles of software development still apply. You have a tool that can make parts of it much faster. You can do a lot of basic work much faster, right? But you need some kind of approach that lets you manage that effort, make sure it's being done right, and develop a product that, uh, uh, has the right type of review, not just a peer review of a pull request, but something that is, internationalization is still not a skill that is really well understood by most developers. So you have some way of really controlling that and knowing that it's good. And it's
If I
part of
hear you correctly, yeah,
yeah,
you're saying you're going back to the topic of complexity. You
right.
described a lot of,
Mhm.
used a lot of words, a lot of
I tend to do
concepts.
that.
Yes, no, no, which is
I
good.
get going.
This is a perfect illustration. I didn't understand a third of the things that you said, but I
Oh,
understand that it's
sorry.
complex. No, I'm just joking. It's just it you describe complexity. So that's
Right.
one of the things that comes around. And the other thing that you alluded to in what you were saying is that the role of that expert in the loop that who you mentioned before, the role of that engineer that understands, the role of that project manager that knows what is going on and how to fix things when they break, the role of that human that is able to make 10x productivity is going to be key and is going to be very valuable, right?
Mhm.
So when we look, so there's one story that we started the conversation, which is around layoffs and reorgs and cost and reduction of localization teams and so on. I would add that this is not happening only to localization; it's happening even more in other groups. And the other point of it is that the people that stay, the one person heroes like Hui, have a lot more responsibility and a lot more uh, impact because they are the ones who are able to spot the problem, or somebody else spots the problem. Somebody needs to correct it and tell them, this is where you go, this is what you do, this is how you address this. So I think that one of the conversations that we started here is the conversation about value, and value is also having somebody that knows what they're talking about, right? Does that make sense, Paula?
Yeah, absolutely. And listening to Adam talking, I mean, this is also something that we bring as localizers is that holistic perspective, that bird's eye view of all of the operational activities happening within a business, right? We know how all the pieces fit together. We're the global glue and we can see where things are falling through. And we're the systems thinking, in the example that Adam presented, these different repositories and they're using different coding languages and having that systems thinking and the ability to use these AI tools to scale, because AI can do things, quickly and easily on a small scale, but in order to scale it much larger than that, you need to be able to be thinking one step ahead and have that holistic perspective, right? Many companies do hackathons, and it's amazing what developers can put together in, a couple of days when they're just focused on that one small thing, or maybe it's a big thing, but how do you scale that with the company? How do you put grow that into a product, it takes time. So I kind of see AI as similar to that.
Another point that we don't talk about, and here is me trying to be a little bit optimistic and take the gloom out of the conversation, is that a lot of these people who are laid off start other companies, and those companies need localization. Here at Nimdzi, we're having a significant increase in the number of conversations with companies that didn't exist 3-5 years ago. They're new companies. And I saw this with the progression of when we converted from 3G to 4G, when a lot of data could be transferred, photos could be shared, videos could be shared on telephones. A lot of new businesses appeared around that. And they hired localization people. And e-commerce, there's a lot more e-commerce happening. And there's a point that you need to localize and internationalize the storefront. Adam, we talked the other day about Saudi Arabia, UAE, and Oman changing their currency symbols. Did you do your homework? So Unicode was updated with these new currency symbols. This has a ripple effect throughout e-commerce platforms, and most people are not aware of that until you start seeing a drop in your sales in Dubai, and you wonder why, right? So there is this opportunity also with it's like Rahm Emanuel said, never waste a good crisis. So there is an opportunity for us to look at the bright side and seeing that those people that were laid off are coding using Claude, they're creating new products, and they need localization, and they need people like us to help them.
I'll just mention that I started Lingoport in 2001. What else was going on in 2001?
It was the internet.
That was the crash.
.com the .com.
Right.
Yeah. It was the .com crisis.
Yeah. Never waste a crisis.
It never wastes a good crisis.
Yeah, I would like to echo that. I think this is a good opportunity for all localization professionals. LLM stands for large language model, right? So fundamentally, it's based on the language itself, how the semantics, and we are the localization professional that has deep and solid knowledge in the language. So I think there are a lot of opportunities. Maybe start your own company, maybe just join a new startup, think about a new business that we can contribute to.
Excellent. So we are 5 minutes away from the end of our session. It didn't feel like we talked for an hour, but any final thoughts, anything that the participants in our conversation should take away from this?
Renato, I'm sorry, we have one question left in the QA. Please take a look.
Oh,
I think we haven't answered that.
See that. Let's go there.
It's a new one.
Okay. So Richard, again, would you agree that the value of the localization professional will increasingly lie in the ability to explain complexity to the C-level without explanation itself being so complex that C-level resources don't just tune out? In my humble opinion, that is more than an art. It's more an art than a skill. I agree 100%. Paula, Hui, what do you think?
I agree. It's an art, but it's a skill that you can build. So continue to practice. I would say I used to be a person that not be able to speak up. But in some cases, when I see issues and I really have a good idea, I force myself to speak up and contact our leaders and have the chance to present this to them. So it's both an art, but it's also a skill that you can practice and getting better.
I
And
totally,
participating in
Mhm.
conversations like this is a good opportunity to develop them, right? Paula?
yeah, I totally agree that it's a skill that you can develop, fueled by curiosity. Again, I keep coming back to find out what's important to the leadership at your company. What do they care about? And if you can't get a hold of them, maybe they have a chief of staff, maybe they have an admin, maybe they have somebody that they know well, find an advocate to find out, and you can practice. You can use AI to practice with. You can tell
Yes.
AI, you can say, okay, I want you to be, here's my leadership person. This is their LinkedIn. Tell them all about them. This is my goal. Be clear about your goal and then have practice conversations with AI. Um,
To that point, Paula, I think that, and who you raised an important distinction. I think
mhm,
that when people talk, when we talk about localization with people, they think translation. And
mhm,
translation is not, it's only one element in the whole stack of things. That when we were talking about complexity, I still think that the most important word, Adam, that you described in the beginning of our conversation is complexity. And people don't realize all the variables that come into that, that ends up in a translation into multiple languages, but there is a lot of complexity around that. And one of the things that we hear frequently in our engagements with clients is that uh, my boss doesn't understand, they don't understand. So it's our job to learn how to make them understand that what we do is important for the organization, what we do is important for them, and what we do is what allows the company to do more. It's very hard to, and to the original question that we received, it's very hard to pair uh, uh, quantitative things to the language element, because
mhm,
you have the sales team that is going to take credit for international growth. You're going to have the marketing team that is going to get credit for conversions. You're going to get HR team for getting credit for engaging with people and so on. So everybody has a stake in this, but the only common denominator in this is that it's only possible because you're doing it in all the languages that your customers speak. So I would close with Paula's quote from Nelson Mandela. If we're able to speak to the heart of the customers of our organizations, I think that mission accomplished.
But
Adam?
also, can
Yeah.
I just add one thing to this, Renato? So yes, all these what you cite, they will take credit for all of these different, but localizers can take credit for piecing it together, for making it a single pane of glass of the non-domestic customer experience, right? Marketing is going to take credit for the internationalization, but we can show that glue. We can show that single pane of glass and that ultimate customer experience. That's where we come in.
Yeah, I also have a one last sentence I want to add here. So don't get disappointed or discouraged when you first present this to your leaders that they don't agree, they push back. That's very normal, actually. So continue to practice, continue to bring this up. Eventually, they will see the value. So at least a part of this.
And sorry, I have one last thing. One last thing. So we've really been hammering on how do we get them to understand? How do we get leadership to understand? They don't understand. Well, let's flip the switch a little bit and ask yourself, how much do I understand of what's important to them? So we can only make them understand when we understand them, if that makes sense.
Adam, last words.
I have a few like really basic practical analogies, right? Every American executive has been to a restaurant where, let's say I'll pick on a Chinese restaurant where the translation of the menu has been rather weak. You know, and they can relate to like you have a medical product, you have a financial product, you have whatever the product is. you can relate to the quality of the translation meaning something. And incidentally, in terms of complexity, the quality of the documentation matches the quality of the product. That's another level that you can bring in. The other analogy, that I use is that, cheap engineering can be very expensive. Or for certain executives, you wouldn't hire a cheap lawyer. That's very expensive. So these are things, to little incidents to put in your hip pocket. I love what Hui said about developing skills, because that's what we do. That's why we attend webinars. That's why we do things. We participate in associations. We develop skills. So that's all part of it. And everybody should be developing their skills with AI. So there you have it. There's lots on YouTube. I'm learning guitar on YouTube.
Excellent.
Yeah.
So thank you all. Thank you for joining us. And this was an excellent session. Keep doing it, Adam. You always have excellent webinars.
We'll have another one for May that carries off of this subject somewhat, with some real practical discoveries. So we'll go from there. But everybody will get an announcement of that, and everyone will get a recording link as well if you want to share this. That's always welcome. And I also really welcome your comments that after the webinar, if you have anything to say anywhere where we could improve, or even just a compliment that I can pass on to our panelists. Thank you, Renato, for taking the lead and making my job easy this month. All right. And thank you for Kate, who's behind the scenes, who makes all this happen. And to Paula and Hui. Take care, everyone.